Nick Navarre going up against Coach Tsukide. Especially, too, let's talk about Nick first, because when we're talking about, well, a staple here on the NA side, we get regional championships. Looking at that world's top 32 at Yokohama is the one I'm eyeing up, though, because now at top 16, you have one up your best world's performance. How far can you take that?
Well, all the way, I think, on the back of Nick's last broadcast performance. I think incredible play from Nick, really resolved in the execution of his game plan. But we can't just forget about Ko as well, because Ko's had some phenomenal achievements. Obviously, earlier in this year, EUIC, top 32 finish there, and that was a tough tournament as well. And then the Senior World Champion, of course, that is the big highlight here from 2019.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, you've done it once, right? You won a world championship.
You've got that experience, and I think that is so invaluable. It can't be understated how much that experience from doing it in another division will aid you coming into this one to be able to kind of just keep your nerves settled, know what you need to do going into this match against the best of the best players.
And reminder as well, Ko, the only undefeated player on day one of Swiss here in Anaheim, and has just been tearing through since. I believe only dropping just one match throughout. So yeah, how far can you take that as well? So I know that we are about to have a great match ahead. And looking at the teams as well, I mean, this gets really interesting because very different teams, especially too when I am looking at Nick's team, because Kyogre, we have seen a little bit of that throughout the weekend, but it hasn't been the most popular pick.
No, but I think something that Nick's quite familiar with, and I think it is one of those Pokemon that if you are comfortable with it, it's got the potential to kind of cut through the opponent quite well. And as Nick's been able to show so far, has been doing the job for them. And I think the changes that Nick's made, he talked about it in his interview with the Urshifu from the Basque Legion, and I think Iron Jugglerist was on the original team as well. These changes, these tweaks have really aided him in being able to carry him forward in this. And I love the fact that Nick's playstyle kind of lends itself to this team as well, where Nick is one of those players that does take their time in between turns, really evaluate what their board state is, and take advantage of the defensive capabilities and the offensive presence that the team has.
I mean, when you're talking about those switches, I feel like they're so strong for the team, just the synergy itself. When you have that Urshifu, that Choice Scarf, you're going to be outspeeding, and sometimes you see that attack drop off, but when you have those attacks boosted by the rain, which is where that synergy with the Kyogre is, that is a lot of damage that sometimes, I mean, there's some Pokemon that cannot withstand up to that, and when you have such a speedy Pokemon, it can really off-put some pressure. The opposing end, though, that Urshifu can definitely do damage against half this team, but there's still some great answers here on Ko's end.
Yeah, and Ko's got something that he can use to take advantage of that rain as well in their own Urshifu, which is going to be useful. Has got the Choice Band, not the Choice Scarf like Nick's got, so going to be able to hit that little bit harder as well. But then you've got the Miraidon instantly putting pressure on that Kyogre, which is really great, and it almost forces a Terastallization on that Pokemon, and if it is your kind of mainstay in the game. You've got the Lunala and that Ursaluna combination, and we've seen time and time again how strong that pairing can be. Lunala has the wide guard, so can really cause some issues for the Kyogre in particular with what move it locks into, maybe having to rely a little bit more on those lower accuracy Hydro Pumps than locking into those more consistent Water Spouts in certain situations if that's on the field. And then the Ursaluna, if that Trick Room is set up, it's going to be a real menace for Nick to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm just eyeing up even the speed control on both of these sides when we're eyeing up that, yeah, maybe Kyogre is something that isn't necessarily on the speediest of end, but you'd really like it to be in situations where it's not too outsped, whereas Ko has some really naturally speedy Pokemon and ways to really be able to set up and enable that. So I'm curious with how Nick is going to be able to navigate that with that Kyogre to really take advantage. As well, you always have to be careful when there is the possibility of a wide guard on the opposing end.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, even if the Trick Room does go up from Ko, if that is the line that he goes down with the Ursaluna, you've got nice options there. You've got the Amoonguss, so you know you can utilize that with the Rocky Helmet to kind of pull in some of those attacks to protect whatever partner you've got next to you. You've also got the Rillaboom as well, which has that priority Grassy Glide that you can utilize. So almost if the Ursaluna can't Terastallize, it's going to be prone to those Grassy Glides, doing big damage. So there are ways that Nick can really navigate this match. Of course, they've got their own Ice Rider Calyrex. It will be one of those more defensively built versions as well with the Leech Seed. So that's something that Nick can use to their advantage.
Yeah, and again, this is going to be a top 16 match again for Ko to try and make his way back into a finals. Another world championship title for Nick to yet again be doing the best world performance he has, getting into the leads. Double restricted for Ko. That's Lunala and Miraidon right away to hit the field for his Fluttermane and Kyogre. This Fluttermane as well, this can all put a lot of pressure, of course, being able to go for super effective attacks, but also a little bit of speed control in itself. And Kyogre, of course, the rain. But has to watch out because Miraidon looks especially scary.
Yeah, definitely scary because of the pressure that it's putting on right now, and that Kyogre almost feels like it either has to switch out into something a little bit more preferable, like the Rillaboom there, which could open up an opportunity for Ko. But I think if you go for that grass terastallization, you have to be worried, like you say, about that Fluttermane going for that Icy Wind. And it's not only that as well, it is the Shadow Ball, the taunt that it's got access to, where it can potentially shut down an opposing Trick Room being set up by Ko in this scenario. It's also got the Moonblast as well that we're seeing maybe locked into to pressure that Miraidon.
That's one of the things, is that Ko has some fast Pokemon, but he also has way to twist the dimensions if really wants to be playing at a different pace here. But Nick, right away, this is a very fast and offensive pace to be starting off the match. It's going to be the Fluttermane into that Fairy Terastallization. When you are eyeing up the attacks that it can have, well, this can do the absolute most. But it's going to be a Terastallization apiece, where Fluttermane can be threatening, but going into this electric type is going to be dropping that weakness and also going to boost these attacks the Miraidon can off-put. This turn one could be huge for this match. Fluttermane, Moonblast, boosted by the Terastallization into the Miraidon. That Terastallization paying off huge. Now Draco Meteor in response into Kyogre. Not quite the one-hit KO. It is going to hold on throughout this turn. Now the special attack on the Miraidon won't be able to do too much, but that was all the damage you needed. Water Spout from the Kyogre is so pitiful. Now the Lunala, it's taken no damage. Moonguide Beam into the Fluttermane. A lot of damage on this turn. No KOs claimed quite yet, but that Kyogre's in a scary spot.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, right? From the last turn, we see the Fluttermane be the choice on Nick's side, Terastallize, trying to snipe off that Miraidon, but really smart Terastallization from Ko to say, okay, well, that is a threat. I know the item on your Fluttermane, it's probably max speed, so we're gonna have a little bit of a tussle here. Getting out of that weakness, Terastallizing, and then dropping the Draco Meteor onto the Kyogre really smart, just to cover in case we do see that grass Terastallization. And it's in a spot now where it is threatened from the Fluttermane, so maybe wants to protect, maybe wants to utilize that Lunala that is in that comfortable position. You still have to be wary about the Hydro Pump, the Origin Pulse threat, but if you can remove that Kyogre, just kind of try and mitigate the damage from that Pokemon here, it will allow you. But Nick in a nice spot as well.
It is going to be a swap. That Kyogre taking so much damage, not necessarily vibing with the board situation. It's going to be the Calyrex Ice Rider to take its spot instead. When I'm mine up on the Miraidon on the other end, again, it has had its special attack greatly reduced, has the ability to switch moves though, since it isn't going to be a choice item lock Pokemon. Get to that in a second though, because it's going to be a switch of piece. Whimsicott now to hit the field for Ko's end. Shadow Ball from Fluttermane into this Whimsicott, so it's not going to be a welcome greeting on the field, just a little bit of damage. Volt Switch now, not necessarily looking for the most damage here, because you actually get a considerable amount, but this is going to greatly make sure that Ko has some good positioning here and can bring the Lunala in, or we can get a sneak peek at that fourth Pokemon.
It'll be interesting to see what that last Pokemon is, but now a really nice switch to that Whimsicott for Ko, because they've got access to that instant Tailwind that's going to allow whatever comes in next to it to get the speed jump on that Fluttermane and potentially be able to remove it from the field, because it is right now a huge threat. Of course, you can't ignore that Ice Rider. Calyrex has just entered the field, still in a really healthy position, and is going to start threatening with those maybe Glistener Lances, or start spreading the Leech Seed depending on what Ko decides to bring in.
I'm curious how much that damage it did take on that swap in though is going to make a difference, because Calyrex Ice Rider, I feel like it's one of those Pokemon that can normally survive one hit. But when you are eyeing up a Miraidon that can deal so much damage, that can be a scary spot, and Lunala is definitely not one that it can deal some damage out here, and that will be the one to re-hit the field. So where do we go from here?
Well, this is it, because I think now with the Whimsicott, you've got the option to go for that Tailwind and then utilize the Lunala to either remove the Fluttermane or the Calyrex. Like you said, that chip damage from the Volt Switch onto the Calyrex has probably put it in range of a Moongeist Beam, which is something you can't terastallize out of the weakness. So Cole's got to really pick carefully here. The one thing that you would say that they've got in their favor is the Fluttermane doesn't have Protect, so it's an easy slot to go into. So you know you can guarantee damage into that slot. Whether the Fluttermane stays in or switches out is the question here. Whether it depends how much Nick really values that and what they've got in the back. And you can see hovering over that Rillaboom, it has got the Assault Vest, so maybe one of those options that could come in. Just give him a little bit of room while you utilize maybe that Calyrex to get the damage you need, because that Whimsicott is threatened from a Glacial Lance, and it's unlikely that we see the Lunala go for the Wide Guard in this situation when there's such an offensive option in front of them.
Well, we're about to find out, but yeah, we talked about the Fluttermane. That's going to be the swap out, and Rillaboom could be better poised in this position as Whimsicott is going to go for the Tailwind. This speaks a little bit of what we can see from the Lunala, that Moongeist Beam. This bat is going offensive, and Rillaboom, that swap in, still a lot of...
Okay. Threat going forward on the field, and the nice thing is as well, grassy terrain now on the field, and it is going to help top up that HP, keep that Calyrex in a nice healthy position. You've got the Rillaboom on the field, of course. It doesn't have the support options that you would like against the Lunala, because that is still a threat to your Calyrex. It is going to outspeed you, and now with the Incineroar coming in, it's going to be a bit of a mind game with whose fake out Pokemon is faster, because if you're guaranteeing, if you're Core and you know your Incineroar is a bit more on the speedy side, you can go for that safe fake out into the Rillaboom, prevent it from using any support, and then go for that Moongeist Beam into the Calyrex, which is susceptible right now.
Yeah, and this Incineroar, I mean, this just makes so much sense for the Pokemon. Now Nick is just so threatened on this turn. And Ko, I mean, you've managed to take a lot of headway. We've gotten to see the Tailwind, so of course Ko is going to have the speed advantage moving on forward. Incineroar offers so much pressure on this turn, and we saw how much that damage that Moongeist Beam from that Lunala did into the Rillaboom. And that's something that can be fired off into the Calyrex at any time. One thing for the Calyrex, with that leftovers, it has been getting a decent little amount of recovery, so we are getting closer to the Calyrex can survive hits mode, and doubly so with the Protect on this turn. Make sure that Incineroar, fake out, no good. Now it's just going to be Moongeist Beam into the Calyrex Ice Rider, nothing. And Incineroar not going for that fake out. Instead is going to be the knockoff, the double up into the slot. So what a good Protect from Nick. Now it's going to be only Rillaboom to act on this turn. U-turn from the Rillaboom, not really about the damage. This is going to be about the pivot.
Yeah, and it's all about that Protect there, and I think what Nick needs to do now is try and stall out these Tailwind turns. Once they go, then your Fluttermane's a bit more enabled to come in and support whatever's next to it and try and get rid of these big threats. As long as this Tailwind's in effect, though, then Ko's kind of in the driving seat. And the problem that Nick's got is a lot of the Pokemon that he's got remaining have such low health. So the switching game to stall things out is getting a bit more limited. And yeah, the Calyrex in that position now, it's pretty healthy, but again, you don't really want it to be in that spot where it is facing down a Moongeist Beam and taking that, because Incineroar likely going to end the Tailwind outspeed the Kyogre, so it's an easy target into that position, and then you just go for the Moongeist Beam. I think Calyrex probably got enough health at this stage to take at least one of those, but the Intimidate's kind of just taking that attack back down to neutral, so undone that chilling Nair boost. So it's not really going to be in the position to pick up a knockout here.
At least for Nick, when you are trying to play the waiting out game, when you have this Kyogre that's built out with the Mystic Water as opposed to the choice specs, you do have a little bit of options with going for the Protect, but you do have to make some really hard choices on what it has to control. Just go out on the field and get KO'd if you are looking to preserve that Calyrex Ice Rider. Fluttermane might be the sacrifice of choice here. Hitting the field already is taking so much damage, down to a third. And if Ko's going for that slot again, it's going to be Fluttermane, no more. Moongeist Beam staring down on the opposing end. Fluttermane instantly to hit the field and go. But Nick slowly but surely getting through the turns. But again, will he have enough once this Tailwind expires to be able to start off putting pressure back into Ko?
Yeah, and I think the opening that the Nick really needs is to try and maybe get that Trick Room up now with it, the Calyrex, because if you can get yourself into a position where you can get that Trick Room set up, it's going to put you in a way better position. You've still got to worry about the Incineroar, but I think the key would be maybe get those Leech Seeds started to spread around the board, and if you can do that, you're chipping away constantly at your opponent. You don't necessarily need to worry so much about the Intimidate cycle, but right now in this position, it's not looking too good for them, and a lot to play for. The problem is with the Rillaboom as well, you can't really fake out, you can't slow down that Lunala because of its ghost typing and the immunity there, which makes this extra difficult. This Tailwind was just well timed by Ko and taken full advantage of the turns that they've got remaining with it.
This could be where Nick can try and make a call, though, because Rillaboom hitting the field, you can try and off-put a little bit of pressure instead. If, I mean, obviously you can't go for the fake out into the Lunala, and the Lunala maybe having to go and make a choice into it. Of course, the Incineroar does still off-put a little bit of pressure here, which could be scary. But if Nick, if you can't sacrifice any more Pokemon, it could be what we have to see happens here. Of course, Rillaboom doesn't have access to protect. Kyogre already just used it, so it would be a 1 in 3. And bringing that Calyrex Ice Rider into the field, I mean, if that's the Pokemon you're trying to preserve, that's just no good.
No, it's not. And if you get the slot wrong in that situation as well, that's where the Moonguy's Beam lands. I think that kind of claws his game up, one up pretty quickly. So we'll see how this plays out as that Kyogre does exit the field as the Tailwind turns do count down.
All right, so Calyrex Ice Rider, see if we can get onto the field safely, or at least make it through, as this Pokemon could be important into the match. But the Moonguy's Beam from Lunala targeting into the slot. We had talked about the leftover recovery, how much, and it is going to survive through the turn, and it's going to be an Incineroar targeting into that Rillaboom instead. So you take a lot of damage. Ko is still looking in a strong spot, but Nick hasn't lost a piece of puzzle, at least quite yet. Both Incineroar's exit, even if that Tailwind has expired, this Miraidon is still super speedy. Yeah,
really speedy, and I think even if Ko takes an attack from the Rillaboom here and it goes down, which is not going to be the case, he wouldn't mind, because I think it just opens the door for the Incineroar to come back into the field. You got that active fake out, even though the Tailwind's about to end, and the Lunala is still in a really strong position, but now you get the Miraidon onto the field, and that is in a really dominant position where it can target either of these, and whatever you don't target, the Lunala kind of picks up that slot, and you're going to be able to close this game out pretty quickly. I don't know how Nick gets out of this. I feel like I'm in a really tough spot right now.
Yeah, when you have 3 Pokemon left and the speed's not really in your favor, even with that Tailwind expiring, you just have naturally slower Pokemon. And the most HP you have on your end is this Kyogre with 38. That is just quivering when you're staring down the Miraidon on the other end. It is a scary situation. Ko just having the natural speed here. I feel like this one is a little bit of a tricky puzzle to maybe think about where things can change up. Again, that Tailwind, that speed. Ko just had so much in his favor, and even with some well-timed protects on Nick's end, there was just too many turns to go through.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of just delaying the inevitable here, so maybe just utilizing this time to rethink and reevaluate what's maybe not gone your way this game and how you can go into game 2 to kind of pull things back around. And that's a fine thing to do, because it's so easy for Ko here to just attack into the Kyogre with the Miraidon, attack into the Calyrex with the Lunala. Your hope is that you can kind of claw back enough health, but I think we're seeing Ko just predict that protect so smartly and go after that Ice Rider with the Miraidon, picking up that huge key knockout.
Ko one Pokemon closer to claiming the first game in this set. I mean, when it's top 16 for Nick, play it out, see what can be done in this point. And it's not, like, the Pokemon count could get a little bit interesting here. I still think Ko's in a strong spot, but with that Life Orb recoil, it is going to be down to 2 apiece. But Trick Room with this change-up of dimensions is going to be Incineroar and Lunala for Ko. Nick with 2 very low health Pokemon, but Nick does have some Fake-Out pressure on this turn. And of course, when you are looking at a little bit of priority, can't have that with the Urshifu.
Yeah,
with the Rillaboom.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing that you've got to call out from that last turn is just the smart play from Lunala, from Ko, to say, okay, well, yeah, I think you're going to protect the Kyogre. I'm going to go after that Ice Rider. I'm going to utilize this turn. I'm going to get some value out of it and go for that Trick Room, putting yourself in just such a commanding position where, you know, the Incineroar is going to come in. You would expect that to be the slower out of the 2, and itself and the Rillaboom. So going to have that faster fake out here, and that's why we're seeing the cancellation locked in. Ko taking game 1.
Yeah, that Trick Room was just so well done, because if it was a situation where, yeah, we went for the attack into the Kyogre had protected, and we got that fake out, it could have been, you know, actually a possibility here for Nick. But Ko just making sure this is a safe play. This is the guy that went 8-0 on day one of Swiss. You know, we're going to see some safe plays. We're going to see a game locked up, and it was just so strong. And that was a really just strong start. I mean, even when you're looking back at that turn one, the amount of damage that you're able to offput from Ko's end. Sure, you didn't quite pick up KOs to start, but the Kyogre was in a spot where you couldn't really offput damage. You just had these faster Pokemon at any point, and it was just so much pressure throughout the entire match.
Yeah, it was a story all about speed control, right? I think that's the key to this. I think leading off of the Miraidon, putting the pressure on to that Kyogre in particular, and then getting the Whimsicott in at a really key moment to get the tailwind up. And then, yeah, I'm not worried if it goes down, because, yeah, you might get a Chilling Near boost, but I've got Incineroar on the back. You don't have the clear amulet. I can just drop that, keep you in check, and keep that pressure on with the Lunala. It was something you didn't have without that speed control. And like you rightly said, at the close of that match, the Trick Room at the end was key, because you get the Rillaboom in next to it, you can fake out the Incineroar and get a free Origin Pulse off with the Rain. It kind of almost forces the hand of the Lunala in that situation to either go Wide Guard and not attack, or attack and maybe possibly lose the Incineroar, and then things can start to turn. So just locking it up, perfectly executed by Cole.
Even with the Hydro Pump, if you could swap one slot and just anticipate. So it is close, but again, just Ko making sure that there was no door open, absolutely no possibility, and playing so smart to the end. But now, where do we go into this game too? Because again, that was pressure that Ko had from the get-go. Where can Nick switch this up?
I think you've got to get a bit more utility out of the Kyogre, honestly. I think it was a bit of a shame that, you know, the Kyogre lost so much health on that turn one, and the Water Spout was so whiffy. So I think if you can get more damage out from that Pokemon in particular, it can be the way to carving out a victory to tie this game up.
Well, it's a Kyogre that's not off-putting any pressure on this first start of the match, because it is not leading the charge. It's going to be Ko going again with that double restricted lead. But Nick, this is where we get to see a little bit of a switch up. Fluttermane is going to be back, but Rillaboom to kick this off.
Yeah, the Rillaboom's a really nice lead here, just to get rid of that Electric Train, to stop the additional boost onto the Miraidon. And you expect maybe it will have to go for that Terastallization here, because the threat from the Fluttermane, if we see it play out like game one, where we do see that Terastallization and the Moonblast come into there, we know that the Miraidon, whether it's electric Terastallization to be able to take that, if it doesn't Terastallize, stays on the field, probably will drop to that Moonblast, and Ko not really wanting to give up pieces so easily. So I think that is a nice play to get rid of the Electric Train, to stop that big damage coming out, and the Rillaboom in a position where it can potentially get some value here. It can get some chip damage into the Miraidon, maybe pivot out, keep that Grassy Train active in the back, or you can break the Shadow Shield or get some big damage onto the Lunala if the Shadow Shield is broken by the Fluttermane.
Right away on this first turn, a lot of different options here for Nick, and on the opposing end, Ko switching up the Terastallization into this Lunala instead. The Fluttermane is so threatening to both of these Pokemon, so you really have to pick and choose, and prioritizing making sure Lunala is not going to be taking super effective damage, and that is going to be one that pays off. Shadow Ball, Shadow Shield, and not too much. Special Defense will drop. You didn't take too much damage. Electro Drift, Volt Switch, sorry, from this Miraidon. That's going to be a considerable amount into the Fluttermane, and a chance for Ko to switch things around.
Yeah, this is just so well played by Ko, saying, okay, I'm not repeating what I did game one, because you probably want to go after the Lunala, expecting the Miraidon, because we talked about how pressured it was. That is the obvious choice for the Terastallization. Ko identifying that, saying, no, I'm going to protect my Lunala this time, because it was so pivotal in that game one. I'm going to Terastallize that in case you go for that Moonblast, the Shadow Ball into this slot. Don't want it to be super effective. Don't want to put myself in danger of getting knocked out by a double up into it from a Wood Hammer that potentially is coming out from the Rillaboom. It's in a nice position, especially with that Volt Switch damage into the Fluttermane there, to put it in a place where if we do see a follow-up from the Lunala, that Fluttermane is gone, and Nick loses a really key piece of the puzzle, which would be huge detriment to him for trying to claw this game back and tie it up.
And I mean, for Ko, that call to, I mean, leave them right on in position where that could have been eliminated on the very first turn.
So brave.
So brave. That's going to be now Incineroar after a little bit of thought to hit the field, but Rillaboom not eyeing up a big attack. Instead, this is going to be the pivot as well. And in the back, it's going to be that double restricted for Nick. Now Kyogre onto the field, but I'm still intrigued with Lunala and what it's gone for on this turn. We've seen the Terastallization, so we know it can survive through the turn, and now this is where we go for the attack into the Fluttermane. So that is going to be Nick down a Pokemon already.
Yeah, and that's a big play here for Cole. I think as well, getting the Incineroar in is great, because now you've got got the option, although that Kyogre comes in, you think, wow, that's putting on a lot of pressure, especially to the water weak Pokemon in Incineroar and the neutrally hit Pokemon in Lunala. You still don't, if you're Lunala, you don't want to take a Hydro Pump from the Kyogre because it is going to outspeed you. So you're in that position where you can utilize the Fake Out. Unfortunately, Nick playing into this, bringing the Rillaboom in, it has that faster Fake Out, so can pin that Incineroar, go for the Fake Out into that slot, and then it frees up the Kyogre to get those big attacks off. So got to be careful here if you all call, because Nick placing his Pokemon in a really good position to try and get a momentum swing, get himself back into this game.
And I love the fact that we got a Kyogre that actually has a lot of health now, right?
Yes, yes.
And the difference in the move going for either a single target or the spread damage, if you think the Lunala isn't going to get wide guard, there's a lot of possibility here. And Rillaboom, I mean, calling out the Fake Out, but I'm curious if we are just going to see that Swapperoo. They could be a big one, but over on the opposing end, Lunala switches. So it's going to be another Pokemon to hit the field and potentially take a lot of damage from this Kyogre. At least Miraidon will be taking the hit quite well, and it is going to be a Pokemon to reset the train. Actually, a double pivot from Ko.
That's interesting, and I think one Pokemon that you've got in the back, if you are called to come in and take one of those big, powerful water type attacks, if not two, is going to be the Whimsicott and that Miraidon, with the Dragon typing going to help there, and obviously the Whimsicott with its Grass typing. So nice position, and getting that Whimsicott onto the field now is really nice, because once again you can go for that Tailwind that's going to put the Lunala in that more preferable position, and the Miraidon in its electric terrain going to be really strong this next turn if it can get through it.
Kyogre has worked so hard to get a Water Spout with that full HP, and the double swap from Ko. That is a lot of damage, but it is going to be two Pokemon that survive.
Yeah, it is, and that is massive, because now both these Pokemon, I mean, otherwise they would still be in range from a Glacial Lance, you would expect, without the Water Spout, but it just guarantees it, right? The thing is, the Kyogre in that spot now where it's so healthy, you mentioned, it's nicely in a place where it could take advantage of these Water Spouts. It is going to have to worry about the Miraidon, because you would expect maybe a Tailwind to come out from this Whimsicott, but does Cole make the decision here to set the Tailwind up, get an attack off with the Miraidon? If he gets the target right, you can maybe pick up a knockout onto one of these Pokemon, but then you're left with only two Pokemon in the back, an Incineroar and that Lunala.
Kyogre maybe feeling a little bit of a threat from that Miraidon on the opposing end. We'll see a switcheroo once again as Rillaboom, again, better poised to take a hit and reset that train, bringing the Grassy Surge, limit the damage the Miraidon can do. This has just been a straight-up pivoting game from both of our trainers, though. Whimsicott is not looking to set any sort of Tailwind, instead switch back out. Incineroar will bring the Intimidate, and that's going to be great when you're eyeing up these two physical attacking Pokemon on the opposing end. Now we're eyeing up the Miraidon, and the pivoting isn't going to stop there. It's going to do a little bit of damage, and yet again, Ko to pivot things around.
Yeah, he does not want to give up any Pokemon if he doesn't have to, and I think that's a really good way to go forward in this match. Keep all your pieces active as long as possible. Now you've got that Intimidate onto the Calyrex. It's going to mean that the Glacial Lances aren't hitting as hard. You can get your Lunala in a bit safer, and your Incineroar's not really going to worry about this with that active Fake Out the next turn, and he's got the ability to continually go for that pivot out, maybe get the Miraidon back onto the field or the Whimsicott to help support, disrupt things on your side.
Looking at the pivoting too from Ko's end, I mean, for the Water Spout one, you took a lot of damage, but you had Pokemon that survived the turn after the switch. And again, with this double pivot to be able to bring these Pokemon in, the Glacial Lance just did really not that much damage.
No, and I think that's the problem with one Intimidate. It feels very underwhelming, doesn't it? And it doesn't feel like you're making the progress that you want, unlike something like Kyogre out on the field that you feel like, wow, this is making steps forward in the game, where the Calyrex feels way, way less impactful. And do you want to slow the game down even further by going for those Leech Seeds and kind of have to rely on that as the way to chip down your opponent? I don't think you've got time to do that against this powerhouse in Lunala. We saw how heavy it hit in that game one. If you give it an inch, it's going to take a mile, and that is something that Nick can't allow to happen.
Every single time we are getting down to just seconds on the clock left for Nick as he is putting in these moves. Down one in the set, has to make sure this is played perfectly to try and take this into a game 3. Thanks to the Terastallization on the Lunala, that is susceptible to getting flinched, and it is not going to be able to move on this turn. Knock off so much damage into the Rillaboom. Assault Vest gone means as well. Any of those special attacks can actually do quite a bit more.
Yeah, and now the Kyogre switch, a really nice one here from Nick, because the Kyogre going to be the fastest thing on the field. It has to be careful. We talked about this at the top of the match about locking into the spread attacks because of the wide guard presence on the Lunala. You kind of don't want to lock into those and it'd be a wasted turn. But you have got the Hydro Pump, and that is something that is going to threaten this Lunala pretty heavily. You do have switches in the back, of course. We saw Cole make switches before you got the Miraidon. You got the Whimsicott. Problem with the Miraidon is it's pretty low health at this point.
The issue with Hydro Pump, it is a single target, but as well, it's not the most accurate. You thought those Origin Pulses were bad? Let me tell you about Hydro Pump. So that is something that can be really scary on this turn, but if you are anticipating it is a wide guard, it might be the only option. No wide guard though, instead Lunala is switching out, so could have been that opportunity to press one of those more accurate moves, but instead it's going to be Whimsicott coming in to soak up the hit. Rillaboom will be the first one. Woodhammer not enough to pick up that KO. Now it's going to be a Pokemon, the Kyogre, to follow up. Hydro Pump will connect, but that's not necessarily where you would have wanted to take the damage. At least you don't have to worry about the Tailwind, but it's not going to be that big hitting move that maybe you would have liked. And knockoff, now Kyogre, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of damage from the Incineroar just left alone, and you can see the rain stopping now, which is not something that Nick wants to see with that Kyogre on the field, and now it opens the door for Cole to get that Miraidon back into play. Probably doesn't mind the Whimsicott going down there as long as it helps preserve the other restricted in Lunala, keep it healthy. And I think the main thing that you've got to do now is get rid of this Kyogre. Once that Kyogre falls, the rest of the dominoes go with it. The Rillaboom, the Calyrex are going to really struggle against that Lunala, especially when you've got the support of the Incineroar there, which is sitting pretty comfortable at the minute. It's not really worrying about much outside of that Kyogre, which you can cover with that Miraidon.
And you talked about Kyogre being the one to really kind of set the pace when we saw how little damage that the Calyrex Ice Rider was able to do and things like the Incineroar, especially after Intimidate. But the Kyogre's in a really, difficult predicament right now.
Yeah, and the problem is with the Miraidon as well, because of the Life Orb item that it's got one attack. And once it uses that, the recoil damage is going to take it down. So you've got to be really convinced with where you're landing this attack. You don't want to waste it into a target that might not pick up the momentum that you need to get forward in this match, make the progress that you're looking for.
Yeah, so do you target into the Kyogre and try and take care of that big threat for Nick? A Pokemon that could also protect, and then you can maybe just lose the Miraidon without doing the damage if the Rillaboom opts in. Yeah. Or do you target into the Rillaboom, even resisted? The Rillaboom no longer has an Assault Vest, and it's still a Miraidon with the Terrain. So where do you target down for Ko with that one last attack? If it is into the Kyogre slot to try and get rid of that restricted, well, instead you're going to be targeting into the other one, the Calyrex Ice Rider back. Still has a lot of health, but still would not appreciate a hit in this situation. But I'm eyeing up this Miraidon. Where do we target? We're gonna have to wait a second longer.
We're gonna have to wait a little longer, and yeah, even if it is into the Calyrex, I think the thing for Nick is that he's got that Kyogre off the field to bring back in, but it isn't into that Calyrex slot, it's into the Rillaboom.
And that's going to be a Draco Meteor to drop the Pokemon on the other end. So Rillaboom is taken down. The Miraidon, though, as you called, that is a Life Orb recoil. That is a one and done. Miraidon is down. Whether it's a worthwhile trade, we'll have to see. Both trainers down to 2 Pokemon apiece.
The one thing that you would say Cole's got at their advantage right now is the ability to bring in this Incineroar, which is really smart, switching that out and not the Miraidon in that situation to preserve it. You've got the Incineroar to come in, you've got the Fake Out, and that might be enough to sway this game in your favor. You can Fake Out and get a Trick Room set up, and that will give you maybe the room that you need to be able to get through this Kyogre that right now is threatening some big potential knockouts.
You only get the one Fake Out, though, into the 2 Pokemon on the opposing end. So there is still the option for Nick to be able to target into something. Something like the Kyogre can be getting rid of the Lunala in one fell swoop. But the Calyrex is a Pokemon that you can start putting pressure in other ways. You can try and anticipate the Trick Room, try and make the heads-up play, or go for something like the Leech Seed and try and make sure that you slowly but surely win out this match with that recovery over time. So there is still some staying power for Nick, even with the Fake Out pressure on the opposing end.
Yeah, and the one thing that Nick's got in their bank is the Terastallization. They haven't used that yet, so they can take advantage of that. And but I think you're right. I think the Leech Seed now is something that you're going to have to really lean into to try and get through this match. You've already taken Intimidate from the Incineroar, so your Glacial Lances aren't going to be hitting as hard. Kyogre in a bit of an awkward spot, and now you've got that Fake Out, which is really pressuring you. And on the back of that, we are seeing that Terastallization trigger pulled.
make sure this Calyrex Ice Rider has what it takes to make it through the turn. As we saw, it wasn't going to be a Protect locked in, so make sure that you can try and make it through to the next steps. Kyogre also looking to make it to the next stage, Protect, so no damage coming out from this restricted. Fake out attempt into the slot as well. It's going to be between the Lunala and the Calyrex Ice Rider. Did Ko ready up an attack or the attempt at the Trick Room? It is the Moongeist Beam. So Trick Room now, well, we saw the lock-in from Nick. This Calyrex Ice Rider will be twisting the dimension, so this is more for itself, but that Kyogre's going to struggle here.
I think Nick maybe have predicted the Trick Room from the Lunala, expecting that and saying, no, I'm not going to allow you to get the Trick Room, trying to reverse it there. But it's almost backfired by Cole going for an attack. Now the Trick Room is set up. Now the Kyogre is in a really awkward spot because the double up into it is active. The Incineroar can go for a knockoff into it, and then you can just go for a Moongeist Beam. That will be enough to get rid of the Kyogre, leaving all the emphasis onto that Calyrex Ice Rider. Can Nick go for a double Protect there? Maybe get a Trick Room again with the Calyrex to flip the dimensions back to normal and put that Kyogre in a better position, because right now it is heavily threatened.
It could just be a Calyrex Ice Rider that is relied on to try and close out its game by itself, with the Kyogre being in a situation it might not necessarily appreciate, staring down the two Pokemon on Ko's end. Now the dimensions are twisted, all down to it, but that's going to be the triple, that's going to be the double Protect. The 1 and 3 Kyogre stays safe this turn. Calyrex, Leech Seed into that Lunala. So we got a perfect situation for Nick, given this situation. Now knockoff, of course, when Pokemon is already protected, this seems like it could have been so safe. So Kyogre makes it through, and yeah, Ko, both attacks into that Pokemon.
Okay, and this isn't so bad either. I think this is another road that Nick can go down. He's obviously identified a win condition going down this route, but needs a little bit of help getting there, getting these Leech Seeds off onto both of these Pokemon before that Kyogre goes down. And I think now the door opens where you can get the Leech Seed into the Incineroar, and between the Leech Seed, the leftovers recovery, it's going to be very hard to take this Pokemon down. It didn't feel like the Calyrex could get into that position, but it is nearly there, of course. The Kyogre still threatened this next turn. Really nice to get that double Protect, of course, but are you just delaying the inevitable where the double up comes this turn into the Kyogre and does remove it, leaving the Calyrex, the Lone Ranger, going into the rest of this match?
I mean, even this Kyogre, you got the double, you go for the triple. It's going to hit the triple Protect! Kyogre, triple Protect on the turn, making its way through the Trick Room as fast as it can. Calyrex on the offensive now, and Ko, you can see, head in hands. And of course, you have to anticipate that would have been a double up into the slot instead. Again, Kyogre has been such a big threat, and it's been a Pokemon that Ko has not been able to take down at any point in this match.
The lifeline is there, and Nick's going for it all the way. The time is chipping for that Lunala with these Leech Seeds sapping away. It's close now to going down to a Glacial Lance from this Calyrex. And now if you're Nick, do you go for the fourth Protect? Do you get it? That is going to be huge if you do, because you're getting through these Trick Room turns. And then if you could do it, the Kyogre are going to be in that spot to just clean up, wash away the opponent, and take this to a game 3. But it's getting close. Everything on the line as we're getting into the latter stages of this game 2.
Might be pushing your luck with that one. The triple is impressive enough. But when that has been all going on and so much attention on this Kyogre, the Calyrex Ice Rider has made such great progress on the field. Now another round of this Glacial Lance. The Lunala has been taken so much, and now it's been taken down. It's only Incineroar for Ko. All the attention on the Kyogre has just allowed this Calyrex Ice Rider to do whatever it wants. And Ko, only that one Pokemon left. And no matter where this targets, I mean, you have a Calyrex at the full HP, you have a Kyogre that finally gets hit on this turn, doesn't get taken down, and a Hydro Pump that gets to connect and take Incineroar down. We're going to a game 3.
This is what we want. It's the World Championships. We won a game 3. We got a triple Protect. We didn't expect it. Great play here from Nick in a really awkward spot. You felt like the match was just slipping away from him, but doing what needed to be done and taking full advantage of the Calyrex. You've got to give Nick huge credit there for utilizing the Leech Seed when they did and the Glacial Lance when they did. Yes, got a bit of fortunate with those triple Protects, but you got to go for it.
Hey, that's why you gotta have high friendship with your Pokemon. The power of friendship really coming in clutch there. I mean, sometimes that's what it comes down to. Sometimes we see those critical hits. Sometimes we, you know, you see that laugh. He knows it. I mean, sometimes that's how the game goes out. But playing to your outs, and while all that attention on the Kyogre, because again, you can talk about the triple and maybe, you know, talk about the luck factor of it, but playing out of what could have been a very scary situation when you're anticipating that maybe Ko was going for the Trick Room, You said it yourself, and just, wow, okay, what do I do from here on? Finding the only win con out of it to make your way into game 3, I think is just wholeheartedly impressive. From Ko, that has to be devastating though, because you were just one double up away from, I mean, moving on into top 8. Now you're going into a game 3, and that is terrifying.
Yeah, and I think this is the testament to Ko right now going into this next match. I think with how well they played game 1, how well they played the majority of game 2, but how that ended is going to hinge on how well they can deal with that. Is it going to affect them going into game 3? Because a lot of players that would affect, that would definitely come into your mind and think, what do I need to do to win this set? And I think you've just got to stay cool, calm, and composed. I think we talked about at the top of the show how experienced they are at this stage, in this kind of environment, this big stage, the World Championships. So maybe it doesn't affect them, hopefully not. But I think you've got to evaluate what you're doing there. I think there's got to be more emphasis on trying to get rid of that Kyogre earlier on in this match if you can. Nick playing so well, not allowing that to happen. So it's not going to be easy, but I think once the Kyogre falls, I think all the other things kind of fit into place.
Especially since that turn where Nick set up the Trick Room could have been a situation where Nick just claims it without. So you have to reevaluate, is there a switch up? If there is, it isn't in the lead though, heading into game 3 here, top 16. A switch up from Nick though. We've seen different leads every time. The Fluttermane has been the tried and true, but Calyrex Ice Rider this time.
Yeah, it's a nice switch up here. You've still got the pressure with the Fluttermane on both of these Pokemon from Ko, the Lunala not wanting to take a Shadow Ball, and the Miraidon not wanting to take a Moonblast. Do you Terastallize the Fluttermane here? Maybe not. You didn't in game 2 and everything worked out, and that Terastallization at the end probably gave you just the edge you needed.
Talking about the mind games and everything else, Fluttermane has had 2 different targets for these first 2 turns. First game, we saw the Terastallization into the Miraidon on the other end with that Moonblast, which would have been a KO if it wasn't for the Terastallization. Game 2, we saw the Moonblast into that Lunala, which would have been Oodles, but it had Terastallized. So for Ko, which Pokemon do you Terastallize? What do you think Nick is going to do on this turn? Like, this could be a huge turn to dictate the outcome of this match.
Yeah, and you can't really overextend on either one of these because they're putting on so much pressure in their own respect. The Lunala pressuring with the Moongeist Gleam into both of these Pokemon here, if no Terastallization. And the Miraidon is in that spot where it can just put attacks and damage onto whatever it wants, but it is leaving the field.
It does not want to stick around to find out if it was going to be a Moonblast. Fired off into that slot. Incineroar swap in seems a lot more safe. Intimidate into the Calyrex Ice Rider is going to be so nice. And Terastallization, well, when you see the Miraidon leave, you know it could only be for one target. That Lunala into that Fairy type. So this seems to be the best of both worlds. Now you don't have to worry about the Shadow Ball. Miraidon doesn't have to worry about anything at all. But Terastallization piece for these trainers, well, Ko is making sure that, hey, this Lunala's safe. Nick is making sure his restricted is preserved as well. Calyrex Ice Rider into that Fairy type. Make sure it can soak up as much hits as possible. Now Shadow Ball that into the Lunala. We saw the damage before. This is going to be breaking that Shadow Shield and see how much damage can be done now in return. As again, Ghost type attack into the Fluttermane. That's got 1 HP. Okay, the Sash. We're bringing it down to Sash. We're making it interesting over here. Now it's going to be Calyrex Ice Rider, Glacial Lance in return. Incineroar going to take that hit so well, and you can see how much that Intimidate pays off. Yeah,
it's a really strong Intimidate. You can see the Glacial Lance just not having the impact that Nick wanted it to. And the Fluttermane there taking the advantage of that Focus Sash, right? You rightly called it out there, where it has the ability to just sit in front of these really big threats because it knows it's got that blanket, that security where it can just choose its target wisely and try and get some crucial damage off. Unfortunately, not really paying off there because of the Terastallization on the Lunala. Now the Incineroar comes in. Do you go for the fake out into the Calyrex to slow down? Probably not. You probably want to try and pivot out, get that Incineroar off the field to drop that Intimidate a little bit later on when necessary to further weaken that Calyrex. And now you've got the opportunity to take down that Fluttermane. As we know, it's got no Protect there, so an easy target for the Lunala.
Ooh, eyeing this up. Fluttermane taking a pause from going for these attacks, instead taunt into the Lunala. So we won't be able to see anything other than attacks from that Lunala for the next couple of turns. Incineroar, it was Flutter Mane with only 1 HP, so that's going to be a very easy U-turn to be able to take care of that Pokemon and get a switch. I'm curious with what Ko can bring out onto the field here with that knowledge of, well, the Lunala is taunted and what can be used to support it.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go back to game 1, I don't think the taunt matters too much. There was not really so much emphasis other than that very end turn on the Trick Room being important for Korra. It feels like that. I think the emphasis is on utilizing that big Moonguy's beam, and that's what I expect to come out into the Calyrex here. Of course, Nick taking the smart choice to Terastallize out of that weakness, so it's not going to take as much damage, but it's still going to be taking about 40 to 45% of its health. And if you don't see a response in a Leech Seed, that Calyrex is going to struggle to kind of keep up with the rest of the field.
Ooh, a little bit more of a switch up from Ko. It's going to be none other than the Urshifu. Looking at that, though, the taunt, it was a Lunala that goes for the Trick Room, and Nick is going to actually go and set it up himself. Now we get opportunity. What is in the back? Rillaboom to hit the field. That is going to put a lot of pressure onto that Urshifu. But that taunt, and then Nick going for the Twisted Dimension itself.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Nick probably wanted to set it up there, because now in a really nice position where you've got the Rillaboom in, you can pressure the Urshifu. It is banded, I believe, and then you've also got the Woodhammer, which, unintimidated, is going to do a lot of damage to that Lunala. Now its Shadow Shield broken, but the nice thing that Ko's got in their back pocket is that Incineroar that's now on the field. It's a pretty easy switch in here to drop that Intimidate and further weaken the Calyrex. The Calyrex, though, in a nice position to start spreading those Leech Seeds around, especially because the Lunala has been taunted. It can't really do much but attack, and it's in a prime position to have those Leech Seeds put onto it, start slowly chipping away at it if you don't want to utilize the Rillaboom and maybe go for that Urshifu instead.
And the Lunala, I mean, talk about the Trick Room and everything else it shut off. Also can't protect, but no Fake Out instead, just dealing the damage into the Urshifu. Not going to be nearly enough for the KO, but Lunala also not being able to protect means it will be Leech Seeded. So every time it's on the field, will be a little bit of damage whittled away every turn. But still, this is going to be a decent chunk of damage into that Rillaboom, even with the Assault Breast, bringing it to around half. And with the U-turn, enough for the KO.
Yeah, there we go. A huge knockout onto a key piece of the puzzle for Nick there from Ko with that Urshifu, being able to retain that for later in this game. Key U-turn there, and now the Incineroar going to be able to come back onto the field in a really nice position to get another Intimidate onto this Calyrex. The nice thing for Nick has got that Leech Seed into the Lunala, so you can start the chip away with that each and every turn and keep your Calyrex a little bit healthier, even though it hasn't got the emphasis and the power that you'd want with those Glacial Lances because of the Intimidate. But the thing is, with the Leech Seed, as long as that Lunala stays on the field, you can switch that Calyrex out, reset these Intimidate drops, and whatever comes into this slot will be able to kind of reap the rewards of that recovery from the Leech Seed each and every turn that Lunala sticks around.
I mean, eyeing up the board with the Leech Seed, I feel like the Leech Seed is going to be the more impactful thing to be really adding up, but the Glacial Lances, after the Intimidate drops, won't be able to really be that damage, as only Nick 2 final Pokemon versus the 4 from Ko. Nick back against the wall, 2 restricted Pokemon, see if he can make his way through here. And with this Kyogre, it was an emphasis throughout the rest of the match. When you are in this Trick Room situation, it's a Pokemon that's going to struggle just a little bit more. So now you have to see, are we going back to the Protect to try and make its way through, and the Calyrex is just going to make a headway here? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, and I think unless you got the Ally Switch, that Kyogre's not really going to be able to take advantage of those Leech Seeds with the 2 Pokemon that Nick's got left. And I think, yeah, it's a really tough position here because the Kyogre is a prime fake-out target where the Lunala maybe wants to switch out here. Maybe Cole wants to get rid of that Preserver for later on in this game. And then you've got the ability to U-turn out on the Kyogre the next turn to keep and preserve that Incineroar a little bit in this match.
Lunala just going to be switching out, so this is going to be great to bring something else onto the field, something that can maybe soak up a hit just a little bit more as Miraidon makes its appearance. Now it's just going to be a fake out, so Kyogre, you know you're not going to be taking damage from that. It will be faked out. Glacial Lance into this Pokemon. Incineroar will take the hit quite well, and the Miraidon, with all those Intimidate drops, still is also going to be taking this hit.
Yeah, no, I mean, the -3 there really showing through. The Glacial Lance not having any impact onto this super effective damage that it would normally do onto the Miraidon. It's still not in the best of positions. Like you say, it can take those water-type attacks from the Kyogre pretty comfortably, but not the Calyrex. You're not going to be able to sit there for so long. But it does have Protect, of course, so it has a way to kind of allow that Incineroar to kind of pivot off the field if it wants to, and the Miraidon can try and wait out these Trick Room turns.
See, I'm just eyeing up this Calyrex and how much setup you can have, but Ko being able to just keep pivoting out when you are looking at maybe just going for the leech seed. If you can get a KO at any point, it'd be nice to reboost the attack up, but all the Pokemon on Ko's end have so much health. Nick, yet again, so stressful, always making sure it's the last couple of seconds. Calyrex is going to be the one to protect on this turn, looking at the preservation of these Pokemon and the Kyogre as well. So we're just looking at getting through the right here, right now. Get closer to the end of this trick room that you have set up, and it's going to be Ko with the protect as well.
Yeah, it's a nice double protect from Nick. It might not make a lot of sense all around, but I think you're expecting the Miraidon to protect here. You want to kind of try and lock in this board, prevent the Incineroar from going for the U-turn, keep it on the board so nothing else can come in and support that Miraidon. Now the Miraidon in that really awkward spot where it can take an attack from these two Pokemon. The Calyrex, we know the damage that Glacial Lance is going to do, and then anything that the Kyogre follows up with into that slot will be able to remove it. So you can remove one of these big restricted targets this turn. Really nice play there from Nick, and putting a lot of pressure onto Ko and having to make some big decisions going into this next turn, because inevitably you want to keep that Incineroar, so you have to go for the U-turn. You don't want to allow it to go down so easily to whatever the Kyogre is going to throw out, be that an Origin Pulse or even a Water Spout at this stage where its health is so high, it's going to be able to get some big damage off.
Just the seconds ticking away, and Miraidon, since the protect was burned, is just going to be switching out, bring another Pokemon in from Ko's end. Lunala is the one to re-hit the field. Glacial Lance, again, we haven't really been seeing these do too much damage, just the slowly over time, and knock off from the Incineroar so much into the Kyogre. So when we're eyeing up the damage output, Mystic Water is going to be gone, but Origin Ball's still there, and that's going to be a double KO. So the score now even 2 Pokemon apiece.
Yeah, really nice pick up there from Nick to get rid of 2 big threats. Now, the knockoff there was interesting. You get rid of the Mystic Water, so it's going to reduce the power of those water-type attacks on the Kyogre. And the rain is on a timer as we see that Trick Room end and the dimensions flip back to normal. The Miraidon going to come back in a really favorable position. It's going to put on a lot of pressure on that Kyogre, cannot terastallize, and the Calyrex as well has taken so many Intimidates up to now. It's not really got the impact that you want, and one thing that Ko can do is take advantage of the rain, because we know the Urshifu is in the back that's going to be able to throw out those big surging strikes boosted by the item that it's holding.
Yeah, eyeing up this board, you now have the Trick Room that's gone, a Miraidon that's hit the field with the speed, and Pokemon from Nick that the Kyogres already have. It also just doesn't fare well against that Miraidon. And a Calyrex, yeah, it's full health, but when you're eyeing up a Choice Band and the rain and this Urshifu, I mean, the list is getting long, and the Calyrex looks, it looks scary for the Calyrex.
It looks scary, yeah, it does. I think the one thing I'm querying is, if a Glacial Lance, we know it's going to do about the same amount of damage again, but that damage plus the Life Orb recoil, will that be enough to get rid of the Miraidon? That would leave then the Urshifu on its own to have to deal with these 2 remaining Pokemon. So I think it's really crucial that you get the target right here. Do you double up into the Calyrex to get rid of it? Leaves the Kyogre kind of open, so it's a little bit risky, but you've got to get it right, and we'll see what is launched out, and it is an Electro Drift.
And Ko, that's the pop-up Electro Drift Kyogre, no chance. 1 Pokemon left for Nick's World Dream. It's going to be just the Calyrex Ice Rider staring down the Urshifu onto the opposing end of the field. We talked about the amount of damage it can do. That Surging Strikes, it isn't going to be enough to claim this game quite yet. But the Calyrex Ice Rider, I don't think it's going to be having enough here. That we've seen how the Intimidates have really stacked up. We've seen how little these Glacial Lances have been doing. We see the health bars. Miraidon will be taken down, but the Urshifu will be enough for Ko.
Yeah, it's a great adjustment coming into Game 3. We didn't see it Games 1 or Games 2, but so well identified by Ko to say this could be the difference maker, and it really is turning out to be that.
And Nick, the applause there for Ko as just 1 move away to win this set. The World's Dream for Ko Tsukide still alive, taking the victory 2-1 and moving on to top 8 here in Anaheim. He has been a world champion once before and has this opportunity 1 step closer to try and relive that.
Absolutely incredible from Ko, and you've got to really give huge credit to Nick as well to take it right down to the wire. He played that so well in such difficult situations, but Ko all the way through just kept the pressure on with his choices, his ball positioning, and that Urshifu adjustment in Game 3 was just amazing, and it really was the difference between winning and losing in that situation. If the Whimsicott had been there, you think, wow, I think Nick would have really been able to close that up.
What a crazy best-of-3 set between those two trainers, though. I feel almost a little bit out of breath after that. Like, where do we even start? Because the thing that's really interesting is we did get to see little adjustments throughout the game with the Pokemon. You're calling about that Urshifu in the Game 3 and how perfect it was. But it was also those little adjustments when we see that Ko did lead the same thing all 3 games, but how different the moves were from there to kind of stay that one step ahead. I feel like the Game 1 of those 3 games was just so different every time. It was so important for that game, and it was just really interesting to see how it always just played out. And I mean, kudos to both of the trainers.
Yeah, and I think the one thing you would say that Ko did in that Game 3 in particular was how fast and effective they were able to remove the support options, the Fluttermane and the Rillaboom, and lock down just those 2 restricteds on the field in the Kyogre and the Ice Rider. I was talking mid-match about the Leech Seeds, maybe you shuffle that round, but no, there was only 2 Pokemon left, so there was no opportunity there, and that was just how effective Ko was in that match. Relentless, just getting rid of the threats, identifying the targets when the opportunity was there and removing them, not taking any risks. And I think the no risk taking was something that we saw throughout that set. Didn't need to overextend or put himself into those really precarious positions. And really, if we look at it, Game 2 was only really lost on the triple protect, and how often do we see that actually paying off? I'm not taking anything away from Nick here, but I think Ko is just such a strong player and just so decisive in their decision making throughout every step of a game.
I mean, you talk back about the safe decisions and not really leaving any room for opportunity for a player to get back into the match. And there's a reason that Ko went undefeated on that day 1, why we do see Ko now into top 8. This has been a trainer that, yeah, has just been really ramping up throughout this. And I'm so excited to see the rest of his run and where he ends up. And yeah, again, we've talked about all the trainers that are really worthy at this tournament, and I could definitely see them calling Ko's name tomorrow, especially after games like that.
I mean, yeah, we said it coming into this match, the only undefeated player in day 1, right? I mean, that is an accomplishment in themselves, but the way that they're playing is just phenomenal, right? Nick is such a strong trainer, so yeah, just amazingly well done. And I think we've got Ko waiting on stage to hear a little bit more about that match as they progress into top 8.
Thank you so much. I'm here with Ko Tsukide, who locked in top 8 here at the 2025 Pokemon World Championships. Congratulations. This is our first time seeing you here on stream. You went undefeated yesterday. What was day 1 of the competition like for you?
昨日は無敗でいけたようなんですけど、昨日はどうでしたか？
昨日は結構順調に対戦を進めることができて、なんか事前に考えてたことがうまく披露できたかなっていう感じです。
So basically, I managed to plan well, and yeah, everything went quite smoothly yesterday. Yeah.
I love to hear that, and I have to wonder, did it go smoothly because you're running the same team you ran at this year's Japan Championship Series event?
順調にいった理由の一つとして、その PGA-CS で使ったチームと同じチームを使っていることも理由に入ると思いますか？
そうですね。PGA-CS の時は序盤の方で負けてしまったんですけど、そこからいろんな構築を試したけど、最終的に今のルナーラミライドンに戻ってきて、十分自信を持って使えているかなと思います。
In the Japanese Championship, kind of lost early on, but I tried different kind of teams, but I ended up to decide that Lunala and Miraidon is the best combination.
It is the best indeed, having locked you into top 8 here. What were your thoughts going into the matchup against Kyogre and Calyrex Ice Rider?
今の試合でカイオーガとバトレックスと対戦する時の気持ちはどうでしたか？
相手の羽ばたく髪、フラッターマネがとても厳しかったので、どうやって倒すかをずっと考えてました。
I was worried about the opponent's Fluttermane, so I was really thinking about how to defeat that.
For sure, and when you realized that you were just one turn away from winning, your Urshifu took the Glacial Lance, how did that feel?
ウーラオスが最後の攻撃耐えて、もうトップ8に入るまであと一歩って分かった時の気持ちはどうでしたか？
本当に頼むっていう気持ちだったのと、マスターの世界大会は最高がトップ16だったので、それは優勝しか目指してないんですけど、まずはそこを超えたいなっていうのを思ってました。
So first of all, obviously I was hoping that it would happen, but the highest I've got so far is top 16. So yeah, obviously I aim for number 1, but I was happy to make it there.
All right, well, Ko, thank you so much, and omodetou gozaimashita on your accomplishment. Ganbatte kudasai. And we're going to be back with more action here at the Pokemon World Championships real soon after this break, so please keep watching.